Hello. As you know, Trump has recently been elected president, and there's currently quite a lot of discussion going around, especially about his different economic policies. I've seen lots of videos and people discussing his supposed tariffs, especially on Chinese goods. There's been a lot of criticism against this, especially from people on the left. And that's something I think is quite interesting, at least as a Norwegian, because in Norway, being in favor of tariffs is often a policy proposal one finds on the left side of politics. So that the left is now currently criticizing him, and especially using talking points one often hears from big business and industry, is a bit interesting. So I would just like to shortly explain, what a tariff is, how they work, and why they can be useful from a perspective other than a purely free trade perspective. So first of all, what is a tariff? Well, as some of the talking heads say, it is a tax imposed on goods from different countries. In Norway, it's toll. Having a toll wall or a tariff wall is something we often talk about and which we use on quite a lot of our goods. And some of the talking points you've heard, or might have heard, is that, if we impose tariffs on goods from China, then it's not the Chinese who are going to pay these tariffs, it's the American people. That coming from people on the left, which are directly echoing probably big business interests there. Because, that is true. If you impose a tariff, let's say apples as an example, if you impose, just as hypothetical, you impose a tariff on apples, let's say the apple regularly would cost, the Chinese apple would regularly cost 50 cents, and you impose a $1 tariff on that apple, then, it's going to cost $1.50 in the store. Okay, so what's the point of that? Well, people need their apples, so they'll have to spend more money, and it's going to hurt the working man. Well, that's not the intention of a tariff. The intention of a tariff is to help national industry, national business, and the workers in the country the tariff wall is surrounding. So let's say growing apples in, let's say, America, the American apple would cost $1, all right? So it's more expensive than the Chinese apple, which has been imported across the ocean, etc. And that is because, labor costs in the United States are higher than in China, right? To pay an American to go around and pick these apples will be a lot more expensive than however they do it in China. And that's kind of also where we get into one of the arguments for the free migration of people, which you previously saw Republicans and people on the right being very in favor of. If you have a free migration of people into the country, you get a free, a lot of labor, and then the price and the value of labor falls. So then it's cheaper to pick those American apples if you have foreign people doing it. Where was I? Right. So let's say the American apple costs $1 in the store. So if you're coming in as a consumer, you see the Chinese apple for 50 cents and the American apple for $1. All right, the more patriotic-minded people and people with a bit of extra money might choose the American apple, but people who do not have the money will choose the Chinese apple, understandably. And that's where you get stores like Walmart and Target, etc., just filled with cheap Chinese goods. When you then impose a tariff, all right, the Chinese apple will become more expensive, maybe even more expensive than the American apple. So the intention then is not to hurt the person buying the apple. It is to get them to choose the American apple, to make it more, in Norwegian we say konkurransedyktig, more competitive to choose local or the national product, the American product. That is the point of a tariff. And in Norway we have quite a lot of tariffs, especially on agricultural goods. And why is that? Well, that is because one of our biggest neighbors, Germany, is a huge, they have an industrial type of agriculture, a very powerful agricultural country. And if we did not have tariffs on goods coming across the border from Germany, then you would most likely see Norwegian agriculture wiped out. All right, a free trade person would say, that's not a problem because Germany, they have big flat fields, they are better, they have a competitive fortrin, they have a competitive advantage in producing agricultural goods. So they should produce them, and then we can buy them, and it will be cheaper for everyone. That's the free trade argument. All right, that is logical. But then you get the reason why, let's say a person like Trump, a more national-oriented politician, would be in favor of the tariffs, well, they would say, well, we need to have these tariffs to protect, say, Norwegian agriculture, because Norwegian agriculture is important to the national interest. It is vital that we are able to feed our own populace and not be dependent on imports from another country. We have experience with this during the Napoleonic Wars. We were at war with Great Britain. We were part of Denmark, Norway, and the British, they blockaded Norwegian ports. They blockaded the area of Skagerrak between Norway and Denmark, making it impossible or very, very, very difficult to import wheat, which led to starvation in Norway. All right, problem. So, therefore, it is a part of our national interests that we are able to feed our own populace to as high a degree as possible in case of a crisis. So that would be an argument where we need to have tariffs to make Norwegian agriculture able to compete with the German one. And then the other side of the argument would be, well, then it is more expensive to have to buy these goods, and that would hurt the regular person. Yes, that is the other side of the argument. Things will become more expensive for the consumer, but it will stimulate to more production of goods in the nation that has the tariffs around it. I'm sorry, my dog has just come to say hello. Say hello, Milor. Hello, hello. But why is America and Trump talking about these tariffs? Well, one thing is you want to hurt China. You want to, try to decrease the trade deficit with the Chinese. You want to keep their goods away, and you also want to make it easier and more attractive to buy American goods, which is something. Sorry, Milor, please go down. Which is something that that makes sense. So I do. That's why one view is the national interest. The reason is if there's a strategic interest in producing these goods locally. Let's say for America, it's energy independence, right? You want to have high tariffs on Russian oil or Saudi Arabian oil or gas coming to the United States because you want it to be you want people to produce that locally, because in case you get into a conflict with these countries, you don't want to be dependent on their energy. Therefore, you need tariffs on goods from those countries. On the other side of the argument is the more leftist labor argument here, and that is because people will lose their jobs. Right? Look at the huge American auto industry cities, Detroit, etc. Free trade with the world. It becomes cheaper to move factories overseas, where people get cheaper labor costs, and then American workers lose their jobs. And the people in these very free trade mindset will say, well, then they'll just find a different job. They'll become more efficient, etc. Yeah, to a certain extent, some people will find different jobs, but there are also people where working in the factory was kind of the most fitting job for them, given their skill sets. And these people become what we in Norway sometimes refer to as the trygdeklasse, the social dependent class, the class of people who cannot be employed other places and end up becoming, stuck on welfare. So from both a labor perspective, taking care of American jobs or jobs in the country with the tariffs, and from a national interest perspective, tariffs make sense. And therefore it is very, very funny to all of a sudden see people way on the left of American politics attacking tariffs, which literally says, one, they don't understand them, and two, they are definitely paid by the big industries who want to get rid of these, or do not want the tariffs. Why do they not want them? Well, because they import things from China, produced very cheaply, which they sell to the American consumers. Yes, it would probably be more difficult and get higher prices on things if you don't get free access to cheap Chinese steel. But well, then you keep the American steel mills going and keep people employed, people who then can buy goods, etc. So there's different perspectives here, things to weigh against each other. But it's just not as simple as people are supposing they are. And it is funny because this type of tariff argumentation is something which you traditionally find on the left. So what Trump has managed to do is he has taken the Republican Party, as I said previously in a Norwegian video, taken the Republican Party and made them a working class party by, supporting some of the main interests of working class people. Well, yes, you can say things might become more expensive, but you're keeping jobs in the country. You're making it more attractive to buy goods produced in America. So tariffs are not as bad, I would say, as they might seem to be. But it is a give and take situation, and that's how it is with all politics. You win and you lose depending on what you do, regardless. So I hope that might have been a little bit of interesting from a Norwegian perspective. Thank you.